Hey there! Ready to unlock some seriously cool insights?
Yeah, let's do it.
We're diving into A Year to Change Your Mind by Dr. Lucy Maddox.
Ooh, I've heard good things about that one.
It's not your typical self-help book, think. More like a fascinating exploration of the human mind.
And with practical tips you can actually use.
Love it. The book follows the calendar year, each month focusing on a different theme.
So we'll be jumping around a bit.
We'll jump around a bit to highlight the most useful parts. Let's start with something we all struggle with. Decisions.
Decisions.
Remember that time you spent ages agonizing over a choice, only to realize both options were pretty much equal?
Oh, absolutely. The book actually opens with this, talking about how we often get trapped in analysis paralysis.
Analysis paralysis.
Yep, overthinking every little detail. It turns out our brains have limited energy for making decisions.
That makes sense. I always feel mentally drained after making a big decision.
It's called decision fatigue.
Wait, so that's why I make terrible choices when I'm tired.
Exactly.
Fascinating.
Dr. Maddox actually shares a personal story about using a pros and cons list to decide about a big job move. Even after carefully weighing everything, the pros and cons ended up being almost identical.
So even with a pros and cons list, it was still a tough decision.
It really highlights that uncertainty is just a part of life. Sometimes you have to trust your gut.
Okay, that's actually really reassuring. So what are some practical things we can do to navigate decision-making?
Well, the book suggests a few strategies. First, try to tackle important decisions earlier in the day when your mental energy is higher.
Okay, that makes sense. What else?
Second, don't be afraid to set time limits for making a choice. Dragging it out for weeks just leads to more stress.
And potentially a worse decision.
Exactly.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
What about when we feel completely stuck? Not just in making decisions, but in life generally.
February's theme is all about that feeling of being stuck, especially when motivation is low. It connects to the concept of learned helplessness.
Yearn helpless.
Yes, where past experiences of feeling powerless can make us less likely to try new things, even when we do have control.
That's so interesting. Can you give us an example?
It's like that experiment where animals exposed to unavoidable shocks later didn't even try to escape avoidable ones.
Wow.
Pretty powerful stuff.
Wow, so how do we break free from that feeling of helplessness?
The book emphasizes the importance of taking action, even tiny steps, towards what you want.
Any action at all?
Even small actions. They help you reclaim a sense of agency and control. It's like telling your brain, hey, we're not helpless, we can make things happen.
I love that. It's a good reminder that even small steps count. Okay, let's switch gears a bit and talk about our environment.
Okay.
I've always felt like my surroundings have a big impact on my mood, but I didn't realize there was actual science behind it.
Right. March focuses on how our environment influences our well-being.
I'm excited to hear about this.
What's fascinating is that studies have shown measurable effects of nature on our brain activity and stress hormones.
Really? So being out in nature actually has a physiological effect on our body?
For example, there was a study where surgery patients with a view of nature actually recovered faster and needed less pain medication than those facing a brick wall.
No way. That's incredible.
It is.
I'm definitely getting more plants for my apartment. What else does the book say about creating a positive environment?
It highlights the impact of colors, light, and even the layout of spaces.
So it's not just about being in nature.
Natural light, calming colors, and cozy nicks can create a sense of safety and well-being. It's almost like our environment is constantly sending us messages.
I like that. Makes sense.
And if those messages are chaotic or stressful, we're going to feel it.
So it's not just about aesthetics. It's about intentionally designing our spaces to support our mental state.
That's a great way to put it.
Okay, now I'm thinking about a total home makeover. But seriously, that's super insightful.
It definitely makes you think differently about your surroundings.
All right, let's move on to something a little more internal. Self-talk. We all have that inner voice.
We do.
But is it a supportive friend or a harsh critic?
That's a great way to put it. April is all about understanding and shaping our inner dialogue.
Love it.
The book introduces the idea of schemas.
Schema.
Basically, mental frameworks we develop to understand the world and ourselves. If your schema about yourself is negative...
Like if you believe you're not good enough.
Exactly. You're more likely to interpret events in a way that confirms that belief.
So it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yes.
If you constantly tell yourself you're a failure, you're going to find evidence to support that, even if it's not true.
Right.
How do we break out of that negative cycle?
One technique the book suggests is to externalize your inner critic.
Externalize.
Yeah, give it a visual persona, like a grumpy cartoon character.
Okay.
It becomes easier to challenge its negativity. You're basically separating yourself from that negative voice and taking away its power.
That's brilliant. I can definitely see how that would make it feel less overwhelming.
Exactly. It's about creating some distance and then asking yourself, is this thought actually true? Is it helpful? What's a more compassionate way to talk to myself?
Okay, this is already giving me a lot to think about. How do we switch gears to something a little more outward-facing? Communication and assertiveness.
Okay, let's do it.
I feel like this is an area where a lot of us could use some help.
Definitely. May's theme is all about effective communication, both in personal and professional settings. One of the key takeaways is the importance of active listening.
Active listening.
It's not just about hearing the words, it's about truly understanding what the other person is saying and making them feel heard.
I'm actually really bad at this. I tend to interrupt or think about what I'm going to say next instead of really listening. What are some tips for becoming a better active listener?
The book suggests a few things. First, try reflecting back what you've heard to make sure you understand correctly. You can say something like, so it sounds like you're feeling frustrated because...
Okay, that's good. What else?
Second, ask clarifying questions instead of just assuming you know what they mean.
And third?
Try to avoid interrupting or offering unsolicited advice.
Oh, yeah, that's a tough one.
Sometimes people just need to be heard and validated.
That's such good advice. I'm definitely going to work on that. What about assertiveness? I always struggle with finding that balance between being too passive and too aggressive.
It's a common challenge. The book emphasizes the importance of using I statements.
Like I feel statements.
Instead of saying, you always do this, try saying, I feel uncomfortable when this happens.
Makes sense.
It allows you to express your needs without blaming the other person.
That's helpful. It's about taking ownership of your feelings while still being respectful of the other person's perspective.
Exactly. It's a skill that takes practice, but it can make a huge difference in all your relationships.
Okay, so we've covered decisions, feeling stuck, our environment, self-talk, and communication. I feel like we've already learned so much. What's next?
How about we delve into the fiery world of anger management? It's August in the book, and things are heating up, both literally and figuratively.
Perfect. I'm all ears.
So you know how sometimes you just feel that anger bubbling up?
Oh, yeah.
Dr. Maddox dives into the science behind anger,
The science.
exploring how it impacts our bodies and minds.
I'm actually really curious about that.
Mm,
I know anger is a natural emotion, but it can feel so overwhelming sometimes.
absolutely. The book talks about how anger triggers our fight or flight response,
I don't like adrenaline.
releasing hormones that prepare us to either confront the threat or run away. It's a primal instinct.
Makes sense.
But in modern life, those responses aren't always helpful.
Right. Like, I can't exactly punch my boss when I'm angry.
Exactly.
So what's the book say?
And the book actually cautions against physical outlets like punching a bag because they can actually reinforce those aggressive impulses.
Interesting. So if punching things isn't the answer, what are some healthy ways to manage anger?
Well, the first step is understanding what's fueling the anger.
Okay.
Is it frustration,
Uh-huh.
hurt, a sense of injustice, or even fear? Once you identify the root cause, it becomes easier to address it in a constructive way.
That makes a lot of sense. Like, if I'm angry because I feel like I'm not being heard, the solution isn't to yell, it's to communicate my needs more effectively.
Exactly. The book also talks about the importance of gaining perspective.
Perspective, okay.
It suggests asking yourself, will this matter in a week, a month, a year? Zooming out can help you detach from the intensity of the moment
I see.
and respond more rationally.
I love that. It's so easy to get caught up in the heat of the moment and overreact to things that won't even matter tomorrow.
Yeah.
Are there any other practical tips?
Definitely. Mindfulness exercises like deep breathing,
Deep breathing.
or focusing on your senses,
Yeah.
can help calm your nervous system and create space between your feelings and your actions. And sometimes simply removing yourself from the situation is the best way to de-escalate.
Okay, so we've got identify the root cause, gain perspective, practice mindfulness, and maybe take a time out if things get too heated. Got it.
You got it. Now, how are you feeling about heading back to work after a relaxing August? September's theme is all about work and stress.
Honestly, I'm not looking forward to it. Work can be so draining sometimes.
I hear you. The book tackles work stress head-on, offering strategies for both managing the inevitable pressures and making our jobs more fulfilling.
Okay, I'm definitely interested in that. What kind of strategies does it suggest?
Well, one concept that stood out to me was job crafting.
Job crafting.
It's about finding ways to tailor your existing role to better align with your interests and values.
So it's not necessarily about a complete career change, but about making small adjustments to find more meaning in what you do.
Exactly. It could involve taking on a new project, finding a mentor, or even just shifting your perspective on certain tasks. The key is to identify what aspects of your work energize you
Yeah.
and find ways to do more of those things.
That's a great idea. I'm always happier when I'm working on projects that I'm genuinely interested in. What about managing work stress? I feel like I'm constantly on edge, juggling deadlines and dealing with difficult colleagues.
The book offers a helpful analogy: the stress bucket.
The stress bucket.
Imagine a bucket that represents your capacity for stress.
Okay.
Everyone has a different size bucket.
Right.
And things like deadlines, difficult people, and unexpected challenges can fill it up quickly.
Okay, I can visualize that.
Yeah.
So how do we keep our buckets from overflowing?
The key is to identify activities or coping mechanisms that can punch holes in the bottom of the bucket,
Holes in the bucket.
allowing stress to drain out.
So things like what?
It could be exercise, spending time with loved ones, pursuing hobbies, or practicing mindfulness.
So it's all about finding a balance between things that fill up our stress bucket and things that help us release that stress.
Exactly. And it's not just about managing stress, it's also about addressing perfectionism, which can be a major source of anxiety in the workplace.
Oh, I'm definitely a perfectionist. It's hard to let go of that need to do everything perfectly, even when it's not realistic.
The book talks about how striving for unattainable standards can actually hinder performance
Makes sense.
and lead to burnout. It encourages us to embrace good enough instead of chasing an elusive ideal.
That's a good reminder. I think a lot of us could benefit from being a little kinder to ourselves and accepting that we don't have to be perfect.
Absolutely. Now, October brings a shift in tone as the book tackles the challenging topic of loss and grief.
That's a heavy subject. I know everyone experiences grief differently, but are there any universal truths about navigating that process?
The book acknowledges that there's no right way to grieve, but it emphasizes the importance of allowing yourself to feel the pain. Avoiding those difficult emotions can actually prolong the healing process.
That makes sense. Bottling things up never seems to work in the long run.
Right. The book encourages us to process our emotions,
Uh-huh.
find meaning in the loss,
Right.
and seek support when needed.
I see.
It also discusses the concept of traumatic grief, which can occur when the loss is particularly sudden or unexpected.
I imagine that kind of grief can be even more overwhelming.
Absolutely. The book delves into the stages of grief outlined by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross:
Okay.
denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance.
Oh, wow. Those sound familiar.
And highlights that while not everyone experiences these stages linearly, they offer a framework for understanding the grieving process.
That's helpful to know. It's a reminder that grief is a journey, and it's
Right.
okay to seek support if you're struggling.
Exactly. Now, let's move into November, where the book focuses on the impact of chronic stress on our physical and mental health.
Stress is such a pervasive part of modern life. It feels like we're constantly bombarded with demands and pressures. Does the book offer any strategies for coping with that?
It definitely does. One fascinating concept it explores is the idea of different nervous system states:
Nervous system state.
threat, soothe, and drive. Most of us spend way too much time in threat mode, where our bodies are constantly on high alert, ready to fight or flee.
Oh, I can definitely relate to that. I feel like my default setting is slightly panicked.
The book explains how this chronic state of stress can lead to a cascade of negative effects,
Yeah.
including increased anxiety, impaired sleep, and even weakened immunity.
So how do we shift out of that constant threat mode?
The key is to intentionally activate our soothe system,
Soothe system.
which is responsible for relaxation and recovery. Engaging in activities like deep breathing,
Deep breathing, okay.
mindfulness, spending time in nature, or connecting with loved ones can help us move from a state of stress to a state of calm.
That makes sense. It's about consciously choosing activities that help us relax and recharge.
Exactly. And the book emphasizes that even small acts of self-care can make a big difference. It's not about grand gestures, but about incorporating small, consistent practices into our daily lives.
I like that. It feels more manageable than trying to overhaul my entire life.
What about December? I feel like that month brings its own unique set of stresses.
You're right. December focuses on managing expectations and navigating family dynamics during the holiday season.
Okay, I'm all ears.
Yeah.
The holidays can be wonderful, but they can also be a breeding ground for stress and conflict.
Absolutely. The book encourages us to recognize that our idealized vision of the holidays rarely matches reality.
Yeah.
It's about letting go of those unrealistic expectations
Oh, okay.
and appreciating the genuine moments of connection, even amidst the chaos.
So it's about accepting that things might not be perfect and focusing on the positive aspects of the season.
Exactly. And it's also about setting boundaries and having strategies in place to deal with challenging situations.
Like what? The book suggests planning ahead to identify potential triggers.
Oh, trigger.
Those family members or situations that tend to push our buttons.
Right.
And having a plan for how to respond in a way that aligns with your values.
That's a good idea. Sometimes I just react in the moment and then I regret it later.
It happens to the best of us. The key is to be proactive and have a plan in place. And remember, it's okay to say no to certain events or obligations. You don't have to do everything.
That's a good reminder. I tend to feel obligated to attend every holiday gathering, even if it's not something I'm genuinely looking forward to.
It's about prioritizing your own well-being and recognizing that it's okay to set limits.
Okay, we've covered a lot of ground here. I
What?
feel like we've gotten a taste of each month in the book.
We definitely have. It's amazing how much practical wisdom is packed into this book.
Yeah.
It really does offer a framework for navigating all aspects of life.
I'm already thinking about all the ways I can apply these insights to my own life.
Yeah.
Before we wrap up, is there anything else that stood out to you as particularly helpful?
One thing that really resonated with me was the emphasis on behavioral activation.
Oh, yeah. I remember that from earlier.
Yeah,
It's about taking action even when you don't feel like it, right?
exactly.
Makes sense.
It's a core principle in treating depression, but it's equally relevant for anyone feeling stuck or unmotivated.
So even if you don't feel like going for a walk
Right.
or tackling a chore, just doing it anyway can actually help shift your mindset.
That's the idea.
Wow.
The book describes how even small acts like making your bed, sending an email, or calling a friend can create a positive upward spiral.
It's like giving your brain a little push in the right direction.
Exactly. And speaking of nudges, the book also delves into the power of our environment to shape our behavior.
We've already talked about the impact of nature and design, but is there more to it?
It goes even deeper.
Deeper.
Dr. Maddox discusses how we can intentionally design our surroundings to support our goals.
So, like, if I'm trying to eat healthier,
Right.
I should make sure healthy snacks are visible.
Yeah.
And put the junk food out of sight.
Exactly. It's about making the desired behavior the easiest option.
That makes so much sense.
Yeah.
What about breaking bad habits?
Same principle. If you're trying to stop mindless snacking,
Okay.
keep those snacks in a hard-to-reach cupboard
Right.
or out of the house entirely.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
It's amazing how these little tweaks can have such a big impact.
Right. Now let's talk about a concept that's both profound and practical: mindfulness.
I've heard a lot about mindfulness, but I'm still not entirely sure what it is
Yeah.
or how to do it.
The book does a great job of breaking it down.
Okay, good.
It's about paying attention to the present moment without judgment, noticing our thoughts, feelings, and sensations without getting swept away by them.
It sounds almost like meditation, but maybe less intimidating.
You could say that. It's like developing a muscle for awareness.
Okay, I like that analogy. How can mindfulness actually help us in daily life?
Dr. Maddox highlights how it can help us manage stress, regulate emotions, and make more intentional choices.
So instead of reacting impulsively,
Right.
we can pause, take a breath, and make a more conscious decision.
Exactly. It's not about emptying our minds, but about observing our thoughts and feelings with curiosity and compassion.
That makes sense.
Hmm.
What are some simple ways to practice mindfulness?
The book suggests practices like focusing on our breath, noticing the sensations of our body, or paying attention to the sounds around us.
So even something as simple as focusing on the taste of your coffee can be a mindfulness exercise?
Absolutely.
Wow.
These small moments of awareness can create a space between our thoughts and our reactions, giving us more control over how we respond to challenging situations.
Okay, this is starting to click for me. Now, I'm curious about this concept of self-compassion. Is it really as important as the book suggests?
Dr. Maddox makes a compelling case for why being kind to ourselves is not a luxury, but a necessity.
I think a lot of us struggle with that.
Yeah.
We tend to be much harder on ourselves than we would ever be on a friend.
Exactly. The book explores the three elements of self-compassion:
Okay.
mindfulness, common humanity, and kindness.
I'm familiar with mindfulness, but what do the other two mean in this context?
Common humanity reminds us that we're not alone in our struggles.
Okay.
Everyone makes mistakes and experiences pain.
Right.
It's part of the human experience.
That's a good reminder. I think we often compare ourselves to others
We do.
and feel like we're the only ones who mess up or feel inadequate.
Right.
Makes sense.
And then kindness involves treating ourselves with the same care and understanding we would offer a loved one.
So instead of beating ourselves up over a mistake,
Right.
we can offer ourselves words of comfort and encouragement like we would to a friend who is going through a tough time.
Exactly. The book suggests practical ways to cultivate self-compassion,
Like what?
like talking to ourselves as we would to a friend, practicing forgiveness, and acknowledging our strengths and accomplishments.
This is really resonating with me. I tend to be my own worst critic,
Yeah.
and I need to work on being more compassionate with myself.
I think we all do. Now, before we wrap up,
Okay.
let's circle back to a theme that's woven throughout the book,
Yeah.
the importance of relationships.
It's true. Dr. Maddox really emphasizes how our connections with others contribute to our well-being.
She covers a lot of ground,
She does.
from navigating family dynamics to building strong friendships to fostering healthy romantic relationships.
It's clear that relationships are complex and require effort. What are some key takeaways for building more fulfilling connections?
One thing that stands out is the importance of communication.
Communication, right?
Learning to express our needs clearly and respectfully, to listen attentively, and to navigate conflict constructively can make a world of difference.
That makes sense. Good communication is the foundation of any healthy relationship.
And it's not just about communicating our needs, but also about showing up for others.
Okay.
Offering support, empathy, and understanding can strengthen our bonds and create a sense of shared humanity.
It's about being there for each other, both in good times and bad.
Exactly.
So true.
Now, as we reflect on A Year to Change Your Mind, it's clear that personal growth is an ongoing process, not a destination.
It's about embracing the journey with curiosity, compassion, and a willingness to learn and grow.
And Dr. Maddox emphasizes that change is possible at any age.
That's great.
It often starts with small, consistent steps.
Okay, so what's our 10-point summary for this deep dive?
Here are 10 key takeaways from A Year to Change Your Mind.
All right, number 1, combat decision fatigue by making important choices earlier in the day and setting time limits.
Number 2, overcome learned helplessness by taking action, even small steps, toward your goals.
Number 3, optimize your environment to support your well-being by incorporating elements like natural light, calming colors, and cozy spaces.
Number 4, challenge negative self-talk by externalizing your inner critic and cultivating a more compassionate inner voice.
Number 5, practice active listening by reflecting what you've heard, asking clarifying questions, and making the speaker feel understood.
Number 6, manage anger effectively by identifying the root cause, gaining perspective, practicing mindfulness, and removing yourself from triggering situations.
Number 7, craft your job for fulfillment by finding ways to tailor your role to better align with your interests and values.
Number 8, embrace imperfection and let go of unrealistic expectations, focusing on good enough instead of chasing perfection.
Number 9, process grief and loss by allowing yourself to feel the pain, finding meaning, and seeking support when needed.
And number 10, prioritize self-care by engaging in activities that activate your soothe system and reduce chronic stress.
There you have it. 10 powerful insights to help you navigate life's challenges and cultivate a more fulfilling and meaningful existence.
We hope this deep dive has sparked your curiosity and given you some tools to create positive change in your own life.
Remember, personal growth is an ongoing journey, not a destination.
Be kind to yourself, embrace the messy realities of life, and celebrate every step forward.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time for another fascinating exploration.